Right, so hello and welcome to our next episode of Leading Talks. I'm really excited to have our guest here today. I know she's a very, very busy lady, and it's great that she's made the time to join us today. Her name is Mariya Ali. She's an author and she's an organizational psychologist. She's been working in this area for about 15 years, so I'm sure she's got lots of stories to share with us. She works with leaders, she works with coaches, she works with other experts, and in that process, there are many, many nuggets which I'm hoping she will reveal to us today. She has worked for many global organizations, names that you will be familiar with, and currently she lives in the Middle East. Now, I'm going to be quiet and start our conversation because I'm excited to know all about Mariya. So Mariya, welcome, and thank you for taking the time.
Thank you so much, Ashim, and thank you so much for that lovely introduction.
It's a pleasure. Right, so where are you now?
So right now, like you said, geographically, I'm in the Middle East.
Right.
Right now in my life, I am post a dramatic pivot, which has gone from me learning about and coaching leaders to actually being a leader myself. So I'm post a period of extreme transition, and in a very, very good space.
Okay, so that's great. There's lots I want to ask you about that. I mean, when did you arrive in the Middle East, and how did you get there?
So I worked in corporate for a very, very, very long time in London, and then after around 10 years of working experience, I decided to leave and follow a passion of mine, which was organizational psychology.
Okay, pause there 1 second. I'm sorry about this, Mariya. I will need to keep interrupting you because otherwise, things that you say which are interesting get lost. What was the trigger that made you decide you wanted to change that environment, the corporate environment?
I think it was at the point where I thought, if I don't change now and follow my passion, then I'll time out. I will be pigeonholed, and so it's either now or never. And I wanted to wake up and be excited about what I was doing that day. I started off my career in an area that I wasn't actually passionate about. I had a story that is quite a familiar one, where when I was going to university, I didn't really know what I really wanted to do. I was kind of one of those jack of all trades, but master of none. There was nothing that I particularly excelled at. I was just very good at a lot of different things. So I had no clear path. So my undergraduate and my initial career journey was something that I just kind of fell into rather than what I was really passionate about. So it was just kind of the realization one day where it was like, okay, it's now or never. It's now or never.
Right. Okay. So I mean, what you've just said, I think most of us have felt, and very often continue to feel, a sense of, I'm not where I want to be. I know that, but I don't know where I should be that is going to fulfill me. Right. So there you are, you're working, you weren't passionate about your job, but you had one. What was it that you were looking for, as you remember it now, that made you decide to go into the field in which you now work?
So I think one of the things that I realized was that I loved psychology. I loved the people aspect of work. I loved interacting with people at work. I was one of those people who were very passionate about making change. If I saw something wrong, I couldn't keep my mouth shut. And so I think that kind of helped me go towards, okay, well, I want to go into the psychology field. And then when I looked more deeply into that, it was either kind of clinical psychology or organizational psychology. And I was absolutely fascinated by organizational psychology. And I genuinely love the business world. I love entrepreneurship. One of the things that I did that I would recommend to anyone who is, not sure, is I went one afternoon to Regent Street in London, and I went into the big Borders. I don't know if you've ever been to London, but there's a huge flagship Borders.
I used to live there, so yeah.
Yeah.
I know exactly where you mean.
Yeah. So I went into the non-fiction section, and I just went to see which books do I gravitate towards. Because you'll know they're all in sections in most bookshelves arranged by themes. So I found myself gravitating more towards the leadership section and, picking up those books and, the 5 habits and the this and the this and reading the back. And then which ones did I feel like, oh, okay, the back seems really interesting. Let me open it and, read a few more pages. And I realized it was all about, leadership. It was all about motivation. It was all about team dynamics. It was all about management. So that was a really big indication that if I had a free afternoon, this is what I would want to learn about in my free time. So that was kind of what sealed the deal for me.
All right. Now, it's a big step, isn't it? Going from the security of a regular salary and knowing what you're going to be doing tomorrow to going out on your own and taking the risk, because all businesses, new businesses, entrepreneurs face this. How am I going to support myself? I have all these commitments. Another thing that many of us face are the comments from the people close to us. Did you face any of that? Did people say to you, maybe members of your family, maybe your friends, hang on, what's wrong with you? Why are you doing this? I mean, it must have been a scary and confusing time, was it?
So it absolutely was. I have to say that I'm so incredibly lucky because I've had nothing but supporters around me. And I think that is one of the reasons that I've been able to do this, because I've been surrounded by people who've had an unshakable belief in me, even when I myself didn't have it. Because one of the things I realized through this process is failure is just not an option. And I made sure that I felt that way, I made sure that there was no safety net that I felt I could fall back on, that there was only one option, which was to succeed.
Right. Sorry, go on.
And so I was extremely lucky. My parents were nothing but supportive. My brother was nothing but supportive. My best friend used to be my flatmate, and we have a thing that she used to call me Boss Lady, and she still calls me Boss Lady. In fact, she got me a mug that says Boss Lady. You probably won't be able to see it, but this is a frame.
Right. No, we can't.
There you go. It's a frame that says Boss Lady that I've got on my desk next to me as I work. So that was one of the things that I'm very, very lucky about. I did have a couple of people say, oh, but this is really the right thing to do. And I just, as horrible as it sounds, I distanced myself from them.
Yeah.
Because the odds are already stacked against you. I believe it's something like 90% of businesses fail in the first 2 years. So the odds are already against you. You don't need other people, magnifying that. One of the things that I did keep in mind is one of my favorite shows is Shark Tank. I don't know if you're familiar with Shark Tank.
Yes, of course.
Yes. So the US version is one of my favorite shows, and I love it because the sharks give great advice. And there was this one pitch in particular, and I remember the sharks were a little bit cruel to this particular entrepreneur who came in, because she was a millennial. And she lived at home with her parents in Manhattan. So it came across that she was privileged. And one of the things they said is, look, you don't really succeed unless you have no option, and you're not going to be able to make ends meet. And when your back is really against the wall, that's when you will succeed. And that's something that I kept in mind. And I realized it in my own experience. Things literally shifted when I thought there is nothing that I have no option now. I need to innovate. I need to pivot. I need to find something that works. And that's actually what happened. We stumbled upon a great idea because I have an amazing team behind me. And from there, it just took off. And I know two of the things that I focus on as a leader is customer experience and excellence. And I deliver on these two things. One of my favorite movies, it's an Indian Bollywood movie called 3 Idiots. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No, I haven't seen this.
Okay. It's one of my favorite movies, and I actually play the clip in some of my team meetings sometimes. But the concept is, and one of the saying is, don't run behind success, run behind excellence, and then success will run after you.
Okay. Now, I want you to pause here, Mariya, because I'd like to bring together many of the threads that you've already touched on, which I want to consolidate. So you talk about having supportive people around you. You talk about making an effort to think and actually take action on identifying where you want to be and acknowledging that where you are right now isn't that place. And you also talk about the teamwork that has, that is going to propel you forward. Now, this is really valuable to a whole host of individuals. So an entrepreneur or someone who's about to become an entrepreneur will be going through this process of should I, shouldn't I, how am I going to do it, I know nothing about business, etc., etc. But also people who are already working in the corporate environment and who are, who feel that they have more to offer and they want some kind of elevation. It might be inside the organization they're already in, or it might be outside that. And again, it's valuable that you raise these issues. The other thing, of course, is the mindset issue. Don't allow yourself to be surrounded by and to listen to messages which are negative. As you say, there are lots of people around who will pull you down, and it's very important that we all see what's going on and distance ourselves from that, because you actually don't need that negative energy around you when you're already facing such challenges. And very, very valuable. So thank you for that. And it's great that the people who are listening to this, if they can take that on board, that would be wonderful. Anyway, so please go on.
There's a lot of things that you touched upon there. And so if you don't mind, I'm just going to go a little bit into what you were mentioning about people who are in organizations who are looking for the next step up. Because, as an employee, that was definitely something that I did. And it's something that as an entrepreneur, you don't necessarily need to face. But when you're in an organization, I think it'd be hard pressed to find someone who wasn't in that position. And so the piece of advice I would give there, two things. Act and deliver like you're already in the position you want to be in, so that a promotion is inevitable. That is the first thing. Prove your value before you even get there and show that you're capable before you even get there. You should actually be operating at the position before you even get promoted into it. So if you're not there, see the gaps, upskill or redirect or fill in the holes to be able to get into. If that means even getting the job description of the position you want, get that job description and start seeing the gaps and filling those gaps. So that's the first thing. And second thing is self-promotion. And I always say self-promotion is not bragging, it's hum-bragging. It's not other people's jobs to find out what you're up to. It's your job to let people know that you're up to something. So I would say those are the two biggest pieces of advice that I would give people who are looking for that next step up.
No, I think great advice there, and I like the self-promotion piece, because many people, and Brits are particularly guilty of this, very self-deprecating. I don't like to show off. I like people to just judge me by my actions or the way I behave with them, and they must know what it is that I'm capable of. And actually, we both know that isn't the way it works. So it's important that you present yourself and your skills and your abilities and your ambitions and what you can do to those people, who are going to be influential in your next role. So yeah, that's great. Okay, anyway, please go on.
No, and just to that point, that was definitely a big learning curve for me when I moved out to the Middle East, because my experience up until that point was in England, where that was exactly the point, right? People in England, I found the culture was much more that your work speaks for itself, because everyone, was in that position where they would not self-promote. It was just not the culture. And so then when I moved to the Middle East, and this was just a new skill that I suddenly need to learn, and I had to learn it after the fact that I was passed over on promotion on multiple occasions, when I thought, well, I'm ready. Why am I not? Why is that person getting the promotion over me when that was the work I delivered? So I think that, and as in a globalized world, I think that this is a lesson that I wish I'd learned a lot earlier than when I actually did.
Right. No, I think that's very true. That's very true. And we see it in people around us in the new environment. In your case, it was Dubai. And suddenly you think, oh my goodness, that's what I've not been doing,
Yeah.
It's important. So you moved here to the Middle East in a corporate role. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And then you shifted into becoming an entrepreneur. We've talked about all the thought processes that were going on, the people you were surrounding yourself with when you were making that decision. So then what happened? You're starting from scratch. What mindset, what actions would you say are the ones that really made a difference in your progress as an entrepreneur?
So as an entrepreneur, I think the biggest thing that shifted for me was accountability. It went from I'm getting a steady paycheck, which was a big adjustment, to I need to perform. I had to really have this unshakable belief in myself, because one of the things that I had a mental block, actually, that I cannot do sales. I am not a salesperson. And I would say it openly, I'm not a salesperson. And that was a skill I needed to learn very, very quickly. And I realized that actually I am a really good salesperson. I just had that mental block. And once I got over that and I just, became myself and realized the best way to sell is through leveraging relationships, and I have that skill innate, then, it was actually something that, to be honest now, I really excel at it. So I think that was definitely a big shift, because it goes from when you're in an organization, you have your job role. When you become an entrepreneur, you have to wear so many hats, and there will be some hats that you think, this is just not a hat that's going to fit me. But that's not the case. You can mold the hat, and you can put many, many hats on, and you just have to keep, relentless. I think if you ask me to say what is the most important thing if you're going into entrepreneurship, the first thing I would say is resilience. You need to be resilient. The setbacks will be fast, they will be furious, and they will be completely diverse. You're putting out fires that you never encountered, you just kind of heard about before. So you have to be resilient, you have to be agile, and you really have to be creative.
Right. No, I think that's really, again, really valuable advice. Prepare yourself for the storm. Did you have anyone helping you, for example, a coach through this process?
So it's very strange how things work, and I think I've been very blessed in my journey that the right people have come along with the right ideas, at the right resources, at the right time. I honestly feel that that's been the case for me. I have an amazing team. They're all women, which was by accident, but they have brilliant ideas, absolutely brilliant ideas. And I think one of the reasons that I've enjoyed, a successful trajectory. One of the reasons I've enjoyed a successful trajectory is because of, my team. Because one of the things that I've realized is that it's not a job for them. For them, they're as invested in the success of my company as much as I'm invested. And so I think, it's cliche, but surrounding yourself with the right people, with the right attitude and the right intentions is really, really important.
I you've touched on something that is critical, of course, to leadership, and that is the team. If you don't have a team, who are you leading, right? You're not leading anybody. But many organizations, I'm sure you've experienced the same, you have managers and leaders who don't have this alignment that you've just identified, amongst their team members. And because of that lack of alignment, there's a lot of frustration, there's a lot of negativity. And there's also, a situation where you find yourself stuck. You're not moving forward enough, and you're not quite sure why. You're doing everything you think you should be doing, but it's not, moving the needle. And very often the reason for that is that the team is not aligned. So how did you find this team? How did you identify that this was, these were the people with whom you want to engage?
So I think I actually, in a very roundabout way, I ended up actually inheriting this team from someone else where I morphed an existing business into something else. So these are the people who had come with me, some of them. And I think, like I said, for me, it's purely the attitude. They're all incredibly capable people, very, very intelligent. But there are lots of very capable, very intelligent people out there. I think what the secret sauce is with them is this feeling of it's mine, right? And the reason
they're taking ownership.
Ownership, not just self-ownership, ownership of the success of the business. And that is a key differentiator right there, because the number of times we will, so just for example, yesterday, I had put a calendar meeting in for, we've expanded now, but I call it the management team. There are 4 of us who were the originals, I like to call them. And, it was meant to be a half an hour session. It ended up into a 3-hour session where everyone was just putting in all of these really innovative ideas of how we can expand. And the reason why it was such a successful session is because everyone was bringing their own perspectives, their own ideas to the table, and really digging deep to come up with them. The other thing, because they're so personally invested in it, in their free time, if they come up with an idea or if they stumble across something, they'll share it. If it's someone who's not committed, then that's not going to be, that's not going to come to the forefront. So I think, especially if you're, at the startup stage or the scaling stage, it's these things that are really, really important, because you don't know what piece of information or what idea is the one that's going to be taken off. So the more people you have who are emotionally invested in finding these ideas, the better it is. So that's what I found.
Right. Okay. So again, lots to talk about there. First of all, you say it was an inherited team. Now, I've also led inherited teams. Did you have the situation where some people kind of, looked at you and how you engaged with them, or how they engaged with you, and said, nah, this isn't right for me? And others who said, yeah, I like the way that Mariya operates, so I'm going to stay and I feel engaged. Did you have that situation? And if you did, how did you deal with those that felt that there was a mismatch?
So I think the first thing that I had to do was gain everyone's trust. And I did that through radical honesty and full transparency. And I mean radical. People have access to my emails. They literally can see all of my emails. So it's complete transparency to get them to understand that I'm a trustworthy person and that everything is out in the open. I am not hiding anything from them. Then it was about getting to know them on a personal level and creating that relationship. And for me, I think it's also my organizational psychology background that I kind of knew, from an intellectual perspective, what makes a good leader and what creates good team dynamics. So I was really able to lean into that. The other thing that was really important to me was I created the culture that I wanted. And by doing that, I realized that it was turning into the organization that I wanted it to turn into, and B, people who were not really a fit for the culture were leaving. And it ended up that the right people who were the right fit stayed. And then the other thing, again, this was another growth thing for me. I'm terrible at delivering bad news. So letting people go was something that I'm still very uncomfortable with. And unfortunately, I had to. When I realized that they just weren't the right fit, or they weren't the right fit for the culture or for the skill set required for the role. So I think it was kind of a transition period of both understanding what was needed and then understanding what was wanted and developing the structure that encompasses both of that.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so just to kind of pull out the main threads. First, transparency, clarity and honesty about what you were looking for, and getting, producing or creating a culture which aligned, which resonated with your vision of the business. Now, typically, a leader will do that by modeling behaviors themselves that they expect and want from their teams. Did you find that a powerful tool?
I think yes. The biggest thing that I needed to model was resilience, to be completely honest. The company, when I inherited it, had gone through some ups and downs. So getting team morale up was tough. And especially initially, we were doing a lot of strategic changes. It was almost like I had whiplash. There was so many turns, and AI was suddenly on the scene, and that had transformed everything, I'm sure, the way it has for everyone else. So our last business model was no longer worked really. So we had to pivot really, really quickly. And so it was already a team that was kind of a little bit tired, starting to become a little bit disengaged. There's all of this change everywhere. There's job insecurity. So it was really starting from the negative to build them up. So the first thing that I needed to have was resilience, and really, really show resilience, number one. And the other thing that I needed to do, and I think it's really, really important right now, especially with, people being a little bit, scared for their job security, is to make sure people understand how valuable they are and how much of an impact their unique contribution makes. Because I think it's something that people are very, very afraid of right now is being replaced, right? And I always say it shouldn't be called artificial intelligence, it should be called augmented intelligence, because it should be used as a tool to expand what you're capable of rather than to replace people. And I think it's very important as a leader that you make sure that there's that distinction and you treat people that way as well.
Right, so basically your team needs to feel self-confident. They need to feel that you've got their back, and that you kind of talk to them about how to address some of the challenges that are currently facing. So you mentioned AI, and remind them that it's something that complements what you're doing rather than replaces what you're doing. I think that's a really important message. And of course, we use AI as an example, but these insecurities are things that team members will feel all the time in different ways. And so as a leader, one needs to be aware that those insecurities exist and be prepared to address them with the relevant members. Okay, so what next?
So what next is, I think, where I'm at right now with my company is growth, right? And I think one of the things that, and touch wood, we've really, in the past month, in fact, the past 2 weeks, we've doubled in size. And we're expanding. And I think one of the things that's very important is future-proofing an organization. And I always say, plan for growth from day one. Because one of the things that I've seen is a lot of organizations fail when it comes to scaling. You drop the ball, you don't have the SOPs in place to be able to scale, you don't have the right hiring in place.
SOPs, standard operating procedures, yes?
Yes, standard operating procedures, the right processes in place. And I think one of the problems with being a leader that I find when I'm scaling is I am committed to excellence, but that also goes into dangerous territory of micromanaging. And so for me, my own self-awareness taught me that I came to the conclusion that I need to give up control. I need to stop micromanaging and trust others to deliver to the level that I expect. And when I started to do that, it really changed the game for me. And I saw the difference that it made to the people who I lead as well, because they realized that I was placing that trust in them and how important it was to me as well. So I think that's one thing that every leader needs, is a little bit more, is taking the time to be self-aware and seeing their blind spots as well.
Yeah, and the other thing, of course, the other advantage of that is that you're making space for your team members to grow. You mentioned earlier they're all highly intelligent people, and therefore they too have their ambitions, and you are supporting them on that journey. It's also something that, allows them to perhaps move up or to expand what they do within your organization or what they do in their lives. And that's very important, because I think we need to realize that our team members, if they're good, are not planning to be doing the same thing for the rest of their lives. And they're on a growth journey as we are as leaders. And it's important that they are encouraged in that growth journey, because we also plan to move on in different ways in our lives, and succession planning is something that we need to bear in mind as well. And so we need to nurture people who are going to be stepping into our shoes or other shoes in the leadership role. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree with you. I think, that's incredibly important. And I think for me, making sure that there is a flat structure, but also a culture of mentoring and learning and teaching and collaboration has been really, really important to me. And it's definitely something that I see the impact of it and the ability. I actually had to thank my team. It was last week, and there was something that happened late at night, and I couldn't sleep. And I woke up at noon. I just said, I'm not going to set my alarm. I'm absolutely exhausted. And I woke up at noon, didn't tell anyone. And when I woke up, which meant half the day had gone, everything was just working fine. The next person in charge had taken care of everything. And I woke up and I saw everything is going, and it was a Monday morning, which is normally when, the work gets assigned and we have our meetings and all of that. And it was just working like clockwork. So I think that's something else. When you have everyone involved and aware of what's going on in the organization, you can just step away. And when they know that you trust them, nobody's afraid to then take the lead when you're not around.
Right. So to step in with confidence.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you do if there is an error, a misjudgment that someone has made? They were trying to do the best they could. They made the best decision they could at the time as they saw it, but it does have negative impact. There are ripples of every decision that an individual in an organization makes. How do you deal with that situation?
So this is actually a key distinction that's come into play after I became an entrepreneur myself, because obviously people around me, when I was working in other people's organizations, big organizations, would make mistakes, but it didn't feel so personal because the consequences were the organization's consequences. So the emotions never came in. It was just, okay, it's been done. Let's find the fix for it. And I was big on no blame, because we're all human. We all make mistakes, and I certainly made my fair share. This was a huge shift that happened when I stepped into a leadership position of my own company, because the repercussions of bad decisions or mistakes were very personal to me and had a direct impact on me, whether that be my business, my brand, my finances, my reputation, whatever it was. It felt very personal. So the reactions, they felt more emotional for me. So that was something that I really had to shift and learn to take the emotion out of it and just think, okay, what are the repercussions and how do we damage control? One of the things with me is, and I think one of the really good things that I would say is, I'm really grateful that I worked in corporate before I took this step, because I remember what it was like to be the employee, and I remember what it was like to make mistakes and how that felt. And I make sure that I have empathy and grace with the people who I work with. I'm in a very privileged position because I did study organizational psychology, so I understand things like intrinsic motivation and all of the other things that make you as a leader get the best out of your people. So I try to make sure that I'm putting those into practice. Of course, sometimes I fail. And I think another thing that's really important is humility. The number of times I've gone and had to apologize and learn from my mistakes. One of the other reasons that I make sure I have a good relationship personally as well with my employees is firstly, I want that. But secondly, it's also strategic. If you like someone, you're more likely to forgive them. because there have been times where I have, reacted in a way that looking back, that's not how I should have. And I've had to go back and I've apologized to them. And learned and said, listen, this was the reason, and I'm sorry. You do a fantastic job, and I reassure them. But that was a big shift that I wasn't expecting, that I would have such an emotional reaction when it was my own business, as compared to so many years of, okay, it was a mistake, let's move on.
I'll ask a question I'll repeat a question which I asked earlier, and that is, it is, as you say, a big shift, and it takes a certain amount of internal courage to acknowledge the mistake, and to do what you can to remedy it. Again, did you have any guidance, which allowed you to look inward and give you that courage?
I think again, it's a combination of things. Firstly, I have great role models that I grew up with. My mother is a phenomenal woman, and she is a natural leader, both at home and in the workplace. So I saw that role model with her, and she has a lot of empathy, and so that was something that I saw modeled in her. Another big influencer in my life is actually my mother's brother, my uncle, who himself is a very successful entrepreneur in New York. And I actually reached out to him and I said, listen, while I'm doing this, please, can you be my mentor? And I've got some great nuggets of information from him. So I think, and that's one piece of advice I would give. It takes a village to raise a child. Look into your sources. You would be surprised with how many random people, if you just said, look, I need some advice, they would be so happy to help. So tap into your network and see who is around, because it could just be someone that says one thing that fits the problem and you've suddenly, got the answer. And there's so much wisdom, and so many other people have made the mistakes that, can prevent you from making the same ones as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And again, we go back to the idea of looking at the people around you and saying, what can I learn from them? And then being open to absorbing and implementing the guidance that they provide. But it's not an easy thing to do. It's easy enough to say, but what we're really talking about is a shift in the way that we think and a shift in the way that we behave. And that in itself is a process. So I would suggest we need to give ourselves grace as well, to give ourselves time and acknowledge that on that journey we will slip back. But as long as we don't lose sight of where we're going, we pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and continue. I think it's important. It's a very important message for people to learn, because it can be disheartening, when you're facing a challenge and people are saying, well, have you thought about doing it this way? And we think it's a great idea at the time, but actually doing it is not so easy. And we need to be kind to ourselves and say, I am going to do it, and I am going to fail along the way, but I won't stop going. Did you have that experience?
Many, many times. I think the one thing, as cliche as it sounds, is celebrate the small wins. Celebrate every win. Have constant check-ins. I myself had a coach, and that was just, she's made incredible impact to me along this journey in terms of mindset, the resilience that I was talking about, the self-belief. So, that was really, really helpful. But yeah, I think just making sure that you are surrounded by messaging, by people, by thoughts of success and growth is really, really important. I would have strategy sessions and come up with ideas. And people would have to be like, Mariya, just, okay, when you get there, you get there. And I'm like, no, for me, it's always, how do we grow? I'm always trying to think about growth, because I really believe that if you think about growth, that's how you get there. Like I said, we had a lot of strategy shifts, and what ended up happening was we shifted into what we actually do now is essentially what I've always wanted to do, right? So I had that vision from the beginning, and like I said, just things have fallen into place. The right people, the right time has happened, and now I'm doing what I absolutely, what I dreamed of doing when I first started my, my masters and decided to pivot into a new company, into a new career. Sorry. Always have your eye on growth and on the dream, because then it's no longer a dream; it's just a destination.
Well, absolutely. And the other thing I would highlight in what you just said, Mariya, is that these, the circumstances and the people around you don't just happen. Yes, one needs to acknowledge that it is our minds that actually make it happen, that make them manifest by the way that we think and behave and interact with others. And these little pieces come towards us because of the way that we are acting and thinking. I think that's important also to highlight. Also, I love the fact that you had the support of your uncle, but also you had a coach, and a lot of people I think would benefit from quality coaching. So something that we need to be aware of. Coaches have coaches. It's not unusual. So speaking of coaching, you've coached leaders and various experts and so on over the years. What have you noticed are the biggest challenges, whether they're mindset or other, or team or anything else? What are the biggest challenges that those people have faced?
So I think the first one is like self-awareness. I think a lot of leaders, they're just so busy. It comes with the territory. So taking that time to stop and become self-aware, and I think that's why a coach is so important, because it makes you take the time, stop, and have that self-awareness, guided by someone who, is skilled in asking the right questions and getting the right insights. So I think self-awareness is really, really important. I think the second thing is balancing strategy with people. It's very, very easy to go one extreme or the other. Without the strategy, the people, with too much strategy, if you neglect the people, they won't execute on the strategy. And with too much focus on people and not enough on strategy, then you'll have a great team with no direction. So it's really important to be able to learn the fine balance between the two. I think the third one would be decision fatigue. So I think it's really, really important to find a way to make decisions quickly and feel comfortable with them. Because I've seen a lot of leaders struggle with this, where they feel like they don't have enough information, or they feel, and so they can't make an informed decision, or they feel like they're inundated with information and then become indecisive. So I think that's a skill that every leader needs to learn, effective decision making.
Yes, and I think there is a confidence component to that as well. We need to come to terms with the fact that whenever we make decisions with incomplete information. That's just the way it is. And so we need to find a way in which we make the best decisions that we can under the circumstances, with the information that we have, and most importantly, feel comfortable in that decision, knowing that it may not produce exactly what you want as an outcome, but also knowing that it has allowed you to move on and that you're not mired in the decision-making process. I think that's really important. And also, we recognize that as we go through this, that we are capable of doing this, and we gain in confidence more and more. Because as you say, leaders need to make decisions all the time, and we need to get good at doing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So to summarize, so basically leadership, decision making, getting yourself a coach, and making sure that you have a balance between how much time and effort you expend on your people and on your strategy. Because at the end of the day, of course, your strategy ain't going to work if your people aren't going to, people make strategies happen. But also people need guidance, and that's where the strategy piece comes in. And so both you and your team need to be able to kind of structure their thinking and behaviors within that framework, within the strategy framework. So let's take a hypothetical situation. You come across a leader, they've given you a call, they say, hey, Mariya, listen, I'm in a place where I'm not happy with my role, or with the organization, or my team isn't working very well. How do you kind of walk them through changing their context?
So I think the first thing to look at is what needs to change. Is it where you are or who you are? And making that decision. And, as an organizational psychologist, one of the things that I can 100% vouch for is there is such a thing as a bad cultural fit. There is such a thing. It's not that you could genuinely be in the wrong organization for you. And every organization does have a unique culture. It's not just something that is put on the website, right? So it's really important. And I think one of the things that people ask in interviews is describe the culture here, right? And then there's that cultural fit interview. And a lot of the times what I've seen is people will take the job because it's a job without actually taking into account, is this place actually the right culture fit for me? And I think that is a shift that actually needs to be made. So you need to ask yourself, am I the right person in this place, or do I need to be in a different place? And if that's the answer, then it's taking steps to change where you are. That's the first thing. The second thing is it who you are? In that case, can you find happiness if you change things around you and things within your sphere of influence, right? So I think that's really, really important to understand what needs to change, and do you have influence over it or not? If the answer to that is yes, then it's a strategy that you need to create. It's literally a roadmap that these are the things that need to change. Strategically move towards changing that to be in a position where you are happy and you are fulfilled in where you are. If it's outside your sphere of influence and it's something that you just don't think that you will be able, it will just always grate on you, then make a physical change. But that would be my thing. Make it a strategic decision. Get as much information in and do the genuine reflection, because if you're stuck in a bad situation, don't think that it will just automatically get better. If you're unhappy, it won't just automatically get better. You need to address and understand what it is that's making you unhappy, and come up with a roadmap to be able to action that and change it.
Yeah, I think that's extremely powerful, actually, Mariya. That we need to, often when we are in toxic environments, or toxic for us at least, we say, well, I had an awful day and I don't really enjoy my job very much, but maybe tomorrow will be better, or maybe I don't have a choice. And many forget that they always have a choice, and there's always something that they can do, and that choice is manifested starting from some self-reflection and honesty with oneself, to decide about what it is that you want, and what you are prepared to do to get there. So what happens next for you, Mariya? You've got this business. You took some fairly radical steps moving out to the corporate world. You brought together this team. You work very well together. Transparency and honesty, you said, were critical to that. And people feel that they have ownership in the business. You talked about how to give space to people to spread their wings and to grow as well, while you are on your own growth journey, which you share with others. So all of this now you've done, where do you go to now?
So I want to say growth, but I'm going to go back to the comment I made earlier, which is what I'm going to do now is what I've been doing previously, and I'm just going to continue to do it, which is to deliver excellence and great customer experience. Because I think then success and growth is inevitable, and I've experienced that. I've actually ended up expanding my services, not because I've offered new things, but because clients have come to me and said, hey, can you also do this for me? Because they've been happy with me, they've liked me for whatever reason. So actually, that's how I've ended up growing and how this business has ended up evolving, through people asking us purely because they're happy with us. So for me, I'm just going to continue to do what I'm currently doing, and with the honest belief that, you know, growth and success will just continue to happen.
Right. I think you make, again, a highly important point, and that is, let your work speak for itself, and let your standards be excellent. And I think that's absolutely true. And, you know, when we apply it to ourselves, you go to a restaurant where you have excellent service, you may not remember what you ate, but you will remember the service, and you're more likely to go back there. And I think that that this is part of human nature, and we need to you know, go that extra mile, if you like, to provide excellence. Now, you've also written a book. Tell us about that, Mariya.
So actually, I've written multiple books.
Oh, excuse me.
No. So one of the things that I did previously was I used to ghostwrite books. So I have many books under my belt, but none of them with my name. But I have written my own books. I love writing. I've been passionate about writing from when I was very young. I give credit to my father and my brother for that. They got me into reading and writing when I was a kid, and I'm passionate about it. So I've written a fair few books. I've also collaborated with others who have written books. And I've also written on behalf of other books. I think for me, one of my favorite books that I've written, or the best book that I've actually written, was with my mother. So my mother, like I said, phenomenal woman. And I mean, I'm taking my mother's name, but honestly, it was a joint effort, my mother, my father, and my brother, who transformed a business themselves. We inherited, a long story short, but we inherited a business that needed to be turned around. It seems to be a theme. And so we wrote a book about the process that she went through and how to turn around a business. And the immense pride I have seeing my mother's name on that. I think it means more than anything that I've ever done myself.
So if someone was listening to this and they thought, that sounds interesting, how would they find it? What's it called, and how would they find it?
So my company is called Level Up HQ.
Level Up HQ, okay.
Level Up HQ. And the reason I've called it that is because, like I said, my service offerings have expanded purely because people have come to me and said, can you do this and this and this? So I said, okay, well, I clearly can no longer be known as what I'm currently known as, which is Book for Your Business, because that is not representative of what we do. That was just when I was ghostwriting. And so what I realized is clients come to me and basically want to take their business to the next level. So they're looking for growth. So then I thought, okay, well, actually what I'm doing is I'm helping people level up. So that's why I called it that. And so now I work with coaches and entrepreneurs to basically position themselves, brand themselves, and go from scaling their time, which is finite, to creating licensable, unique assets to make them stand out and be able to scale their assets, which is exponential. So, I'm more than happy to work with any entrepreneur, solopreneur, anyone who is interested in growth. I'd be more than happy to just get on a call and see how, that can look.
Well, I think that's probably going to be everyone who's watching this video, and I'm sure that they'll be reaching out to have a conversation with you about perhaps working together. And I wish you every success in that.
Thank you.
So that unfortunately brings us to a point where we need to wind down. It's been wonderful, Mariya. Thank you very much for sharing all of those experiences and pieces of advice, which are very practical and which are designed, or which actually come from your experience. It's not something that is theoretical and that we've read in books, because it's something that we have evolved as we've learned them, as we've experienced them, or rather you have. So I think it's very, very powerful messages, and I'm sure that everyone listening to this is going to benefit from our conversation. We wish everyone that's listening every success in their journey as well. And I'm sure if you follow some of the things or all of the things that Mariya and I have been talking about, you will get there. So thank you again, Mariya. I know you're extremely busy and I'm going to let you go, but it was great to have this conversation.
Likewise. Thanks again for your time.
It's my pleasure, Mariya.